Dodgers have won it all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk him off. Let's Taylor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome into a special Monday night episode of DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and joining me tonight, Daniel Starkand. There's a little bit of free time now that Lakers Summer League has ended. Team USA wrapped up their Olympics preparation. Daniel, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. It has been a while since I've done one of these live shows, but I guess I picked a good time. There's obviously a lot going on with the Dodgers right now. Big sweep over the weekend. Actually, a lot of my family is from Boston, and some of them are in town right now. So they kind of were talking a little bit going into the series because the Red Sox were hot going into the All-Star break. But as we all know, things could kind of change quickly in baseball. So looking at it from the Dodgers' perspective, that was obviously great to see, considering how they ended the first half. For them to come out and get that sweep to start the second half was great.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, there was no secret how bad the Dodgers went into the All-Star break. They're really scuffling there. So they get a sweep against the Red Sox. Scott and Blake did a lot of recapping of that last night. They touched on James Paxton, who now is a focal point for this show with a little bit of unexpected news. So we've got, a great night planned for everybody as we kind of lead up to first pitch at Dodger Stadium. River Ryan's making his MLB debut, so we're going to plan to time this to end right around 7:09 or 7:10 on the dot, so that we can all hop off and go watch River Ryan. We want to thank everybody who is tuning in right now live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. As I said, we're going to touch on James Paxton. We also have some Gavin Lux news. We congratulate him and see if maybe there's some encouraging signs with him. We'll get into River Ryan and then leave some time for a few questions at the end. But as a reminder, if you do want us to touch on something specifically or change kind of the topic of conversation, Super Chat's the way to go. You guys know the deal with that. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, please be sure to hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, all that good stuff. And if you're not on YouTube, maybe come check us out later. And we're also available wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you to those of you who are listening via audio stream, I guess, if you will, after the fact. Real quick, before we get into tonight's show, one last thing. I want to make sure everybody knows about our sponsors, So Rare. You've heard us talking about them in the past. They're still going strong this month with after completing a fun sort of all-star game competition. Now they have their July Chase. They're going to give away $100,000 in cash prizes for all competition levels. That includes $100,000 to the free-to-play common competition, which isn't something they've always done. So that's a really big deal. There's a link in the description of this video, this podcast, if you're listening, to sign up for your free account through Dodger Blue. You could play with our staff and all that. So be sure to definitely check that out. All right, Daniel. So let's get into it. If anybody was around, if you were online at some point, if you're reading our website, if you're following us on social media, you saw James Paxton picked up his 8th win of the season yesterday and was rewarded by being designated for assignment today. The Dodgers have, sort of sent him packing. It was a corresponding move to River Ryan, making room for him on both the 40-man roster and the active roster. They just took care of it in one fell swoop. Daniel, I think there's some pros and cons to this, but kind of explain sort of the line of thinking behind what the Dodgers decided.
Well, the first thing is, and we've kind of been talking about this all year, like James Paxton has never really been in the Dodgers October plans. Like, I mean, we've been watching him pitch all year, and if they're trotting out James Paxton to start, playoff games, kind of similar to Lance Lynn last year, like you're in bad shape if that's the case. So like we knew this, not necessarily DFA'd, but we knew he wasn't, going to make it all the way through the season as a member of the rotation. And I know like the rotation's been kind of battered and bruised lately. So the timing is a bit peculiar, I would say. Like, obviously we know they need healthy arms right now, and they haven't really had that many. But you mentioned they're calling up River Ryan to pitch tonight. Tyler Glasnow is pitching Wednesday, and then Clayton Kershaw is making his return as well. So there are reinforcements on the way here. Like, I think, hopefully if everything goes to plan and there's no setbacks and Tyler Glasnow is a guy you could count on. Kershaw's a guy you could count on. River Ryan is now up. Wrobleski had a good start over the weekend. Like there is more depth in place now. And of course, obviously the trade deadline is like 9-10 days away or whatever. And pretty much all the rumors the Dodgers have been linked to is starting pitching. So I think we're all kind of expecting at least one arm to be added. So kind of with all that being the case, like they just didn't really have, room for James Paxton anymore. And he's not really a guy that you could throw in the bullpen and be like, his stuff's going to play up, like he's going to be a great reliever. That's just not really his role at this stage of his career. So I think by doing the DFA now, like, a couple weeks before the trade deadline, now you kind of open up the trade market. Like there's a ton of teams out there that need starting pitching right now. And now that they know that Paxton is a guy that they could go out there and get, like, I'm not saying the Dodgers are going to get a top prospect or anything by any means, but they should be able to trade him in the coming days and at least get something for him. And then from there, you just kind of hope the guys you have stay healthy, or whoever you add is a legit difference maker.
Yeah, so Paxton is still going through waivers, but Sergio Sound says he's making a prediction that Paxton beats the Dodgers in the playoffs already. Yeah, I think you definitely hit the nail on the head of, the Dodgers have a lot of pitchers coming back, especially from the 60-day IL. And that's really what is the impetus behind this, is they've had to maneuver their 40-man roster and try to leverage it as best as they possibly can with so many different players, but really pitchers specifically getting hurt. You mentioned Clayton Kershaw is one of them. He's starting Thursday, so he needs to come off the 60-day IL. And so they need not only a spot on the active roster, but a spot on the 40-man roster. And so to your point, Paxton's not the first guy we're going to see the Dodgers DFA in the next, he'll be the second one. He'll be the first of probably two this week. Brusdar Graterol, they're hoping on him coming back at some point. I think even Ryan Brazier's on the 60-day IL. Yoshinobu Yamamoto's on it as well. So you can look down the line. And yes, there were going to be these decisions that the Dodgers faced. And I see a lot of people saying, DFA Yohan Ramirez. That my gut reaction to the Paxton news was, why would they do that right now? But then, like you mentioned, the trade deadline is coming up. So if they were to DFA Paxton down the line, it really limits what you can do with him. Basically, you're giving him away for free. Whereas a Yohan Ramirez, if you lose him for, potentially nothing, so be it. Paxton does have value. The Dodgers are, yes, it's no secret they're looking for starting pitching. So are several other teams. And, is Paxton, is he at the top of the list if you compare him to Garrett Crochet or Tariq Skubal? No, but there is certainly some value there. He's on a 1-year deal. It should also be noted that Paxton reached all the incentives that were in his contract already. So that was, good for him. Credit to him for staying healthy. Him and I believe Gavin Stone are the only pitchers that have made every turn in the rotation for the Dodgers this season. So Paxton's 18th start was, as I mentioned, was against the Red Sox on Sunday. That one specifically earned him a $1 million bonus, which I imagine the Dodgers are responsible for paying. And so at this point, any team acquiring Paxton is just owing him the rest of his $4 million base salary for this year, which I think is it's obviously under $2 million because more than half of the season has been played. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. But then you also mentioned, and where I do agree, there is a little bit like now the Dodgers really need Clayton Kershaw to come back and be good, because before it was like, well, okay, if he kind of struggles, as much as you don't want Paxton starting a postseason game, at least he's there if you need him. Walker Buehler needs to come back and pitch well. Bobby Miller needs to come back up from the minors and pitch. Like, I think it's fair to say that it does put more of an emphasis, and there is some risk. And now those guys all needing to basically be good, short of, I guess, the Dodgers potentially acquiring 2 pitchers at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of question marks in the rotation. Like, you didn't even really mention Tyler Glasnow, who's coming back from a back injury. And I know,
we have the tall guy on with us. This is Daniel's the perfect one to
I
let
can
us
tell
know.
you that could pop up at any time. Like, Clayton Kershaw knows that as well. Like, your back could flame up at any time. So I know it was a minor issue, and, they feel confident that he'll be fine. But he's already close to his, career high in innings as well. So I mean, they are counting on a lot of guys to come back. But with that being said, there is a lot of depth there. You don't know how many of these guys are going to come back, but when you're saying you got 6 different options and you need to rely on 2 of them, like, you at least hope that you'll be able to do that. And I think, River Ryan's going to get kind of a runway here, which I'll be curious to see, how that goes. Like, if he going to be a guy that sticks, and maybe, when it gets to October, are we talking about him as an option as a rotation, or does he have a couple bad starts and then he's back at AAA and we don't see him the rest of the year. And we'll get into him later in the show. Obviously, he's pitching tonight. But yeah, I mean, I do think there is, a lot of uncertainty, and who knows, they could go out at the trade deadline and pick up 2 or 3 starters, and then all that uncertainty is gone. And then you're like, oh yeah, like that's why they DFA'd Paxton. I will say, like, it wouldn't be like the Dodgers to do the, like, to not have a plan here, like, I don't think they just woke up today and said, oh, we need a roster spot, let's DFA James Paxton. Like, I definitely think they have a plan in place. We just got to, between now and the trade deadline, we'll see what they do. But I do think moves are coming.
Yeah, and one person I didn't mention who I think this puts a little bit more pressure on is Gavin Stone.
Yeah.
He had a great first half, so credit to him. Now, though, looking ahead to the postseason, I'm skeptical with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, even though we have been getting somewhat encouraging updates the past couple weeks, maybe the past week to 10 days more specifically. Yamamoto himself said he's pain-free. He also said that his goal is to return this season, which to me sounds like of course that's what you want, but it's not necessarily the biggest confidence inspiring comment he could have made. And so now to me, it looks like even if they only, quote, I'll use it, only trade for one starter at the deadline, all of a sudden you're looking at a very real scenario where Gavin Stone is potentially your game 3 starter in a playoff series, which, can he handle that? Sure. But we haven't seen him do that yet. And that's always, it's one concern. I think it's a fair concern. It's not a knock on Stone specifically. It's like that applies to Bobby Miller last year. It was his first time in the postseason. We unfortunately saw how that went. So it's an interesting decision by the Dodgers. There are a lot of, sort of moving parts, not only that'll come and then before the trade deadline on July 30th, but then even well beyond that with, Yamamoto hopefully coming back at some point and just seeing then how the rotation is sort of pieced together. As much as October feels like it's around the corner, it's still several months away. And for better or worse, a lot of things can happen between now and then.
Yeah. And look, if they are able to trade James Paxton here, like, I'll be curious to see what they get back here. Like, I'm not expecting a whole lot, but we've seen, with the Dodgers, we're talking about River Ryan. That's a guy who they got when they traded Matt Beatty to the Padres. So Andrew Friedman doesn't have the best track record when it comes to trades, but there are some, like, low under the radar type moves that he's made that have wind up, paying off down the road. So we'll see what they could get for him. Obviously, there's a ton of teams that need starting pitching right now, and if you're someone like Matt who just looks at record and ERA, like, James Paxton is not a bad option out there.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe there's still a few of those teams out there that are just going to look at his 8 wins. I think it's go 8-2 or something for the Dodgers. All right, so our next topic is Gavin Lux. It was a short week of baseball coming out of the All-Star break, obviously, but Gavin Lux was named National League Player of the Week. It's the first time in his career that he's earned that. Luxy hit a home run in back-to-back games against the Red Sox. First time this season he's accomplished that. Led the National League in total bases with 13, tied for the NL lead in home runs with the 2. He also had 4 extra base hits during the 3-game series against the Red Sox. Daniel, is it fair to say that Gavin Lux is trending up and he's going to be a force in the lineup now?
Well, first of all, let's call this what it is. He was NL Player of the Weekend. It was not a full week. Obviously, the All-Star break, they only played 3 games. But with that being the case, obviously, we need to see more here. Like, it's a great weekend, great series. He obviously came up with a ton of big hits, helped the Dodgers earn some wins. But I still think it's too soon to say, that Luxy's back. He's the starting second baseman the rest of the way. I think it's too soon for that. I will say it is good timing if you're Gavin Lux. Like, obviously with the trade deadline coming up, you haven't really hit all year. Now's a good time to say, hey, like, I can do this. Like, obviously he missed all of last season with the knee issue, and we kind of expected him to take some time to kind of get back into it. Obviously, we thought it would be less time than this. Like, we're 2/3 of the way through the season here, but it's great to see. We're not exactly sure when Mookie's coming back, but he'll be back at some point, and we'll see if they go pick up a middle infielder at the trade deadline. I think they've kind of been linked to outfielders. I don't know who's really out there on the middle infield market, but it's good timing for him if he wants to keep playing.
Yeah, Aaron Vaughn says, can Gavin go back to shortstop, dare I say? I texted you guys yesterday after Rojas got hurt and Lux kept hitting. I said, hey, Dodgers have their shortstop. Things are fine. They don't have to worry about it. You mentioned Mookie. Dave Roberts did say before tonight's game, Mookie was taking backhanded ground balls which was a first since he had his hand fracture. He also swung the bat for the first time, so his grip strength, I think they said, needed to get to at least 85% before he would be cleared to do that. What Dave Roberts wasn't sure was if Mookie was like hitting off a tee or maybe just hitting soft toss or just taking, dry swings type thing. But at the very least, that's the first time he's been able to pick up a bat. So it's certainly a positive step in the right direction. All that being said, I mean, Mookie's, I would guess, at least 2 weeks away from returning. And so there's a little bit, the shortstop is going to be something to sort of monitor. I agree. I think at least a week now, I've been saying I don't think the Dodgers are going to end up trading for a shortstop. We did a bold prediction show last week during the All-Star break. I was on with Anthony, Jeff, and Blake. I tried to make my bold prediction that they don't trade for a shortstop, and they all made fun of me and said it wasn't bold enough. So then I had to really go aggressive and say Gavin Lux is going to start at least 5 playoff games this year.
Okay.
So that's where that stands. So Lux NL Player of the Week, my bold prediction. We're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, he's making you look good right away there. And back to that last comment, I would just say keep Gavin Lux far away from shortstop. He's honestly been great defensively at second base. There's no need to mess with that at all here.
Yeah, definitely. We have a super chat, so let's pause before we move on to our next subject. Laura apologized for not getting to this sooner. Thank you, as always, for the support. She says, am I the only one that assumed we'd have a trade in place if we are DFAing Paxton? She's apologizing if that was already discussed. So we did discuss Paxton getting DFA'd. Neither Daniel and I are really not surprised, I guess, that there wasn't a trade yet. This was very much, if they hadn't called up River Ryan today and they DFA'd Paxton, I would say, yeah, like, what are you doing? Like, it's kind of for no reason. You could do it closer to the deadline. But Daniel, did you think, or is there any thought that maybe they should have waited until a trade was in place that they did something like this?
I think it was, like you said, it was more about clearing the 40-man roster space to call up River Ryan today. And honestly, the good thing about like kind of the whole process when a guy gets DFA'd, like now he's on waivers. I think it's for like 5 days or maybe 3 days.
I think it's 7. It might be a week. I saw some people saying 10, but I'm pretty sure it is set. You have 7 days to make a trade.
Yeah, so like it wasn't like a huge rush where you have to DFA a guy and trade him an hour later. Like now they have the next week or so to talk with teams and see, what the best offer is. I'm sure, once that news hits that he's DFA'd, I'm sure the phone was ringing. So we'll see what they could kind of end up getting for him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, because if he is also claimed by a team off of waivers, which his guaranteed salary is only $1.5 million. So I imagine somebody's probably going to claim him. That's then the team that the Dodgers would have to work with. Whereas if Paxton were to clear waivers, then there's a little bit more flexibility for the Dodgers. Maybe, you drum up some interest and, hey, this team is interested. Like, are you going to match their offer type thing, get a little bit of leverage. But unfortunately for the Dodgers, I don't necessarily see it getting to that point. But Laura, thank you for that super chat. And thank you as always for your support. I know you're one of the consistent people we have in here on now a seemingly almost nightly basis that we're doing these. And Aaron Edick says, more Daniel-san on the show or we riot. I have good news to everybody. Daniel should be on with a little bit more frequency now that he's got some free time. As I mentioned at the opening, Summer League is over. Team USA has a little bit of a break before the Olympics start. And so Daniel should be on more videos, either live ones like these throughout the week or short clips, not clips, but shorter videos where we focus on one topic that we put up in the mornings. All right, let's move on to our next topic. The Dodgers, it's no secret, they continue to be linked to starting pitchers. Tariq Skubal is kind of the big name out there. Is he available? Is he not available? That's obviously to be determined. But there's also a little bit of a narrative forming that the Skubal, if he is traded, he basically might be the Orioles to lose. Daniel, how aggressive do you think the Dodgers should be if Skubal is indeed available? And I didn't see the complete stat line. I don't know if he's done pitching tonight, but he is having, I think, another good game today.
Yeah. No, he had another good outing tonight. Look, if Skubal's available, I'd be all in on that. Like to me, he's a top 3 pitcher in the league right now. He's in the prime of his career. He's got a couple years left of club control. Like when you talk about wanting to go out and make a trade at the deadline, that's kind of the dream right there. Like if you could add a guy of that caliber, that's a real difference maker. And not only that, you're keeping him away from someone you might be playing against in the playoffs. Like if as sitting here as a Dodger fan, I don't want to face that guy in the playoffs. Like we we just saw him in Detroit last week or whenever it was. He's got really good stuff. And I know the Dodgers have been interested in him for kind of a while now. So like Andrew Friedman usually isn't the one to push all the chips in and go after that big, the big name guy at the deadline. But I think this is a guy who, obviously knowing the need they have at starting pitcher, his age, his how much club control he has, like this is honestly a guy I could see Friedman kind of, pushing all the chips in and offering, 3 of their top prospects or whatever the case may be with like a young major league type piece. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that's enough for the Tigers. Like I feel like they're in a situation where, considering he has 2 years of club control, like he doesn't have to be dealt at the deadline now. And if you're the Tigers, you got to be blown away to really deal him. And looking at the Dodgers farm system, like they don't really have that piece you could throw in that to really blow them away. Like they have a lot of really solid prospects, but I don't think they have like a top 5, top 10 prospect in all of baseball right now. And I think that's kind of where this narrative is coming from, that the Orioles might have an edge here. We know they have a lot of young talent in that organization. Jackson Holliday is one of the top prospects in all of baseball. And considering how many other young pieces they have, like they might just say, yeah, like we don't mind trading Jackson Holliday to go out and get a guy like Tarik Skubal. So, obviously if the Tigers are willing to deal him, I would be all in on that. But I don't see it happening. And B, even if it does, I just think other teams like the Orioles could beat out the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I think what makes the Orioles interesting too is they're a good team as is right now. Corbin Burns is, leading their rotation. He's going to be a free agent. And so, Baltimore, maybe and the Dodgers, to a certain extent, it applies to them as well. But if, like you said, if there is a pitcher to maybe really be aggressive and go quote unquote all in for, especially if you're the Orioles, this might be it for them, because the odds, at least, the ownership is changing. Previous ownership, the odds of them re-signing Corbin Burns, like you could pretty much write off as he's leaving. He's not going to be back with the team. Maybe that'll be different this time around. But at the very least, Skubal would give you some insurance if you're the Orioles. If you're the Dodgers, similar line of thinking in terms of, moving forward. Again, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, whether he returns this season or not, like he is dealing with the rotator cuff. So you don't necessarily know what his career, at least next season in the immediate future, could end up being. Now you have somebody if you acquire him, you potentially pair him with Tyler Glasnow. Like that's your 1-2 punch. Hopefully Yamamoto is back this year, is healthy next season. That gives you three of the best starters in baseball, right? I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a better trio than that.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see. The big wild card, of course, is what the Tigers are going to do. You mentioned it. They're not in a position where they have to trade him this deadline. I think we've seen teams in the past hang on to players because of that line of thinking, where in reality, if you do trade him now, like maybe you can get a little bit more from a team that's acquiring him, because it is this extra October run this year. So that'll be interesting to sort of monitor. Potential fallback option for the Dodgers that's been out there seemingly for 2 months, it feels like, a trade with the White Sox. Those reports have largely centered around Garrett Crochet, a little bit of Luis Robert Jr. being mentioned. But our good friend Bob Nightingale, who I haven't seen in the chat here tonight, he's been with us recently, but not tonight so far, mentioned that Michael Kopech, I forget how to mention his last name. Michael Kopech, his name has been brought up now in talks between the Dodgers and White Sox as well. If the Dodgers and White Sox do move forward with the deal, assuming you're probably not getting all 3 of those guys in one trade, because that would be a lot, are there 2 of the 3 that you would say that the Dodgers either need, or like who would be your pick, I guess maybe is the best way for me to frame it?
Well, I would say I'm kind of the opinion that starting pitching is still kind of the Dodgers' biggest need. Like I know we talked about all the different guys that could come back, but I just think there's too much uncertainty there. So if you sat here and told me like the Dodgers can only make one trade and acquire one player, like I would say starting pitching personally. So with that being the case, I like Garrett Crochet. I know the innings limit is kind of a concern, but I also think the Dodgers are kind of in a position with their division lead where they would be able to kind of manage his innings down the stretch if they had to. And he's a guy who has a lot of club control. Like he's really young and the stuff is just downright nasty. So if you could add that guy to your rotation for years to come, that's obviously huge. So he would be first. And then I'd say Luis Robert or one of their other bats. Like I feel like the White Sox, their whole roster is just up for sale. Like who do you want? Like, throw them in. So obviously Luis Robert is kind of the one guy who is viewed as a star of that group. But if the White Sox aren't trying to trade Robert, or he's just too much for the Dodgers, especially if it's a package of Robert and Crochet, like you're really talking about giving up pretty much all your top prospects at that point. So with that being the case, if it's not Robert, I think we've talked Tommy Pham a lot on the show. We've talked Paul DeYoung. Like those aren't stars by any means, but when you look at the bottom of the Dodgers lineup, you could probably say they're upgrades over a lot of those options, and they're a lot cheaper than Luis Robert. So I think you could probably make a nice little package there of Crochet and one of those bats, and you're giving up a lot, obviously, but you're not giving up, necessarily Tarek Skubal, package or a Crochet and Robert package. Like it's still manageable and obtainable for the Dodgers. So I definitely think we've seen the Dodgers and White Sox work together in the past. Maybe they'll do us a solid here because we gave them Nick Nastrini for Lance Lynn last year. Maybe they'll give us a little discount this time around.
Yeah, I saw Blake in the chat earlier. I don't know if he's still hanging out or getting stuff done before the game, but hopefully he missed the Nastrini comment. So with Kopech, are you just, is there not interest there with him as one of the two players you would want the Dodgers to target? You just don't think the bullpen maybe needs to be addressed, or is it something with Kopech specifically?
I mean, look, the guy throws really hard. He's a former starter. But I'm just me personally. This has kind of always been my philosophy. Like I'm not giving up top prospects for relievers, and obviously if he's a throw-in and you're just adding one more mid-tier prospect, like fine, bring him in. Like the more arms, the better. And the guy throws hard. He's got good stuff. But I don't look at him as like a Mason Miller type where it's like you throw that guy in the back end of your bullpen and the ninth inning is locked down. Like that's just not really what he is. Like his command is kind of all over the place from what I've seen at least. So, he's a nice high upside arm that we see the Dodgers kind of go after a lot, where he's got the stuff and you figure you could teach him how to be a better pitcher. But to me, I look at the bullpen is not the biggest need. Like I'm sure they'll add, a reliever or two. But let's say they did trade for a guy like Michael Kopech. Like if you told me Nick Anderson had a better last 2 months of the season than Michael Kopech, like that would not surprise me at all. So that's kind of why and I know Blake, feels similarly about this. Like I'm not giving up top prospects for relievers.
Yeah, and if you may be wondering why Daniel mentioned Nick Anderson specifically, he's somebody that the Dodgers just signed over the weekend to a minor league contract. So definitely head to DodgerBlue.com. We have that article up. If you missed Blake and Scott during their live show Sunday night, they touched on Nick Anderson a little bit. So you could definitely check that out if you want some of the, as I like to tease Scott, his nerd stats on Nick Anderson. You'll get that information there. Real quick before we move on and then to River Ryan and then take some questions. With Crochet, he is facing, I don't know if it's a soft innings limit, but some sort of innings limit this season. If there's the potential that maybe he's only capable of pitching out of the bullpen, not only to finish the regular season, but maybe for the playoffs, would that concern you at all? Like, are you looking at him as if the Dodgers get him, he needs to be able to start games at some point?
I mean, honestly, like he would be a pretty good weapon out of the bullpen as like a multi-inning type guy who you could just unleash. We know the Dodgers, don't usually push their starters to do, give much length. And when it's the playoffs, like the leash is a lot shorter. Like you might see starters coming out in the fourth inning, fifth inning, etc. Like if you could go to Crochet for 2 or 3 innings there, that'd be pretty good. And I was just looking up his contract. Like he's under control for 2 more years. So that's why like I wouldn't be too concerned. Like if he was just a rental, then obviously like, yeah, that would be a huge concern for me. But like, even if you're trading for him and you're getting a dominant reliever for this postseason run and then a starter for the next 2 years, like that's still a really valuable piece. And I also think at the end of the day, like you'll kind of see where you're at with your starting pitchers. Like they might have, if Glasnow's healthy, if Gavin Stone's healthy, if Kershaw's healthy, if Yamamoto somehow comes back, like you might not even need Crochet as a starter. And I know it's hard to count on all those things, but I also I think you just get the guy and you kind of play it by ear from there. Like if his arm's bothering him, then you pull back. If he's feeling good, then you kind of just keep going.
Yeah. And at the very least, you would know that there wouldn't be any sort of awkwardness in a starter needing to adjust to a bullpen role, because this is
Yeah.
Crochet's first season as a full-time starter. So he has plenty of experience pitching in relief. So that wraps all that stuff up. Let's move on to
I will
River
say
Ryan. Go ahead.
real quick, I will I wanted to bring this up when we were talking Tigers, but I would say another player on the Tigers who is obtainable via trade and the Dodgers should be looking at it is Jack Flaherty. We've talked about him for years as a potential Dodgers trade target, and this is kind of the year where he's really putting it all together, and he signed a 1-year deal with the Tigers, so they're definitely going to trade him at the deadline, or else they're going to lose him or whatever. So hometown kid, grew up in my city, Burbank, California. He's having a great year, and it's not a Paxton great year where the record's great, the ERA is okay, but everything else is just a mess. Like if you look at Jack Flaherty's numbers, like he's striking out a ton of dudes, not walking anyone. And this is kind of what his potential was like when he was the top prospect going back a couple years. Dealt with some injuries, but he's now healthy and he looks great. So obviously he's not costing what Scooba would cost. Like it's a expiring contract. So if you could add a guy like that, I would be in on that as well.
Yeah, and I know Flaherty is somebody who has shot up Scott's wish list recently. And I was surprised. You mentioned he just signed a 1-year contract with the Tigers during the offseason. I fully expected him to end up on the Dodgers. He had the local kid, the profile. He can throw hard. He just, maybe they're going to refine some things here and there. So I was shocked that with their offseason going the way it did, that basically they ended up, if you want to look at it, they ended up with Paxton instead of Flaherty just because they were both 1-year deals. Like that certainly did surprise me. So yeah, maybe he makes his way back home via trade. All right, so let's focus on tonight for a little bit before we get to first pitch. River Ryan, if you missed it, he's up with the Dodgers. He's making his MLB debut tonight. Daniel, we're getting obviously a first look at him, and he hasn't pitched a whole lot this season. His start to the year was delayed because of some right shoulder issues. He didn't pitch at all during spring training. A couple rehab starts, and then I think 5 with Oklahoma City after being activated. Is there anything specific you're looking forward to seeing with him? It's always exciting to watch a player make his debut, but we need to remind ourselves too that it is their first time at the major league level, and it unfortunately doesn't always go great.
Yeah, and for that exact reason is why I try to temper expectations. Like obviously with a debut, nerves are going to be involved. You just mentioned he hasn't pitched a whole lot this year. It's not like he's been at AAA the whole season, just absolutely shoving. Like that hasn't really been the case. So he's still kind of building himself up, but I know it's a really talented arm. I mentioned earlier in the show they got him for Matt Beatty, so that's always going to put a smile on my face. The fact that this could have been a top prospect in the Padres organization right now, but instead he's with the Dodgers. But yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm not going in expecting 7 shutout innings tonight. Like if he could just give them 5 solid innings, that would be great. And use it as something to kind of build off of, just because with all the uncertainty in the rotation right now, there's a spot that's there for the taking, and River Ryan, could very well take it. Like I know we all had high expectations for Bobby Miller coming into the season, but considering he hasn't exactly panned out, if River Ryan could kind of just take his place and be the guy we thought Bobby was, or 75-80% of it, that would be huge for this rotation. So I'm excited. Like I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched River Ryan pitch a million times. Like I haven't really seen him that much. So I'll be curious to see what the pitch mix looks like. How's the command? I mentioned nerves could be at play, so the command could be a little off, but I just want to see him get out there and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, and real quick, if you guys have questions for us, go ahead and start throwing those in the chat. Just start it with the word question in all caps. It makes it easier for Daniel and I to pick them out. With River Ryan, you mentioned Dodgers got him in a trade with the Padres. When he was in the Padres organization, they had him, I think he was a shortstop. They had him playing the field. So he was a position player. I think in high school, he was a quarterback. So he has, some, I guess, throwing, if you will, experience behind him. It's taken off since joining the Dodgers and converting to pitching. They converted him pretty much right away. And so that's where that has been. If you missed it, we might be 2 or 3 weeks now. So you might have to scroll back a little bit, but Jeff actually spoke with River Ryan during his trip to Reno. So that video is up on our YouTube channel. We've shared it in a couple different articles as well. But if you haven't seen it yet, definitely go back and check that out. It could even be, after tonight's game. I know we're running short on time. All right, so let's get to some questions here. I didn't see anybody. Aaron's leaving us. He says he's leaving. He's going to turn the game on. We still have 20 minutes. Aaron, we're here to entertain you guys until then. Let's see. I saw some questions earlier. Now I can't find it. Dan, I'll ask you one. We've seen Evan Phillips struggling recently. He's now become a little bit of a focal point. Dave Roberts was asked about Phillips before tonight's game, and he didn't say he's not the closer, but he also didn't say that he's only going to be used in save opportunities, where I don't imagine there's a huge level of concern, but is there anything specific that you think maybe Phillips has struggled with that has caused his recent regression?
I mean, it's a small sample size. You see this with relievers and their volatility. So like you said, I'm not overly concerned. Obviously, Evan Phillips is a guy that we've come to trust more than anyone else in that bullpen. So it is a little shocking, I guess, when you see him struggle the way he has. But I honestly like the move here. Like, let's maybe get him in a lower leverage, situation or earlier in the game in a high leverage situation where it's not necessarily the ninth inning. But I will say, like, some of his struggles have come in kind of lower leverage situations where it wasn't like he came in a one-run game in the ninth and blew it. Like, he's kind of first of all, other guys have struggled in front of him, which kind of forced him in the specifically that Tigers game. So yeah, I'm not overly concerned, but obviously that's a guy that you need to get right, and hopefully between now and October that'll happen.
Yeah. All right. We have some questions from people, and now I just lost them in the chat. So, here we go. The Darkness says, question, now that the Cubs said they're sellers, is there any potential targets you would consider? Are you on my Cody Bellinger propaganda train?
I guess, like with anything else, it depends on the price. I will say Cody has definitely regressed a little from last year. He's not as bad as he was with the Dodgers necessarily, but honestly, like, just for the defensive alone, like, we've seen some rough outfield defense this season. So if you could get Cody in there, just as your everyday center fielder, like, whatever comes with the bat is kind of a bonus. But if it's like anywhere, like if you're giving up top prospects, then I'm out. But if it's a reasonable price where the Cubs are kind of like we kind of want to dump this contract, and I know Cody has opt-outs and such, but with the way he's playing, he might not necessarily opt out after this season. So if they're kind of just willing to dump him and take a couple mid-tier prospects or whatever, I'd be in on it. Obviously, I love Cody. A lot of great memories and some poor ones too, but if it's reasonable, I'm in.
All right, so I'm going to combine these questions. Bruce Davis says, do you think the Dodgers get a closer? Laura's asking, do the last couple games close the book on a potential Kenley trade?
I mean, first of all, I don't know if the door was ever open on a Kenley trade. Like, I know he's talked about it. A lot of Dodger fans have talked about it, but the Red Sox are kind of in the race right now, and maybe that changed over the weekend, especially with the trade deadline coming up. But they were in a wild card spot, and they were one of the hottest teams in baseball leading up to the All-Star break. So I don't think Kenley's going to be traded. As far as the Dodgers acquiring a closer, like, I don't think we've ever really seen that other than when they traded AJ Pollock for Craig Kimbrell. Like, usually we see the Dodgers just get like a high leverage type reliever that they could trust. Like, they don't specifically go after closers just because the price is higher. And a lot of the times with like I've been talking about with reliever volatility, like, you don't want to give up a top prospect for a closer and then he melts down, in October. And then you're like, why did we do that? So I definitely think, as always, we'll see the Dodgers kind of, I like to call it dumpster dive, like, see what's out there on the reliever market. We just talked about Nick Anderson. Like, they just picked him up for nothing. Like, we'll see a lot of that, or, a rental type reliever like we saw with Chris Martin a couple years ago. Like, that ended up working awesome. And it's not like they gave up a top prospect for that. So I would expect them to add at least one reliever, but I wouldn't expect it to be like, the biggest name on the market or anything like that.
Yeah. So these aren't questions, but I'll turn them into one. MH says the Dodgers are showcasing River Ryan to leverage in a trade. And Amanda took it a step further, says this is definitely a showcase for the Tigers to see what they could get in River Ryan. This isn't something I had necessarily thought about. I don't think the Dodgers would trade River Ryan, but is this a scenario that maybe they're considering of, hey, here's this young prospect we have. If he pitches well in his debut, then all of a sudden his trade value skyrockets a little bit more?
I mean, look, if you're talking about for a guy like Scooble or Crochet, two guys who are under control for 2 more seasons, then I think you'd be more willing to part with a young arm like River Ryan. But if it's for like a rental or a bat or something, I just don't think you could really afford to subtract from the big league rotation right now. And there still is a lot of other quality pitchers in the farm system who are in the upper minors or lower minors that could be appealing to teams. So I think if you're the Dodgers, you would love to keep River Ryan just because he's a guy who could contribute right now. He's not 2-3 years away or whatever. But at the end of the day, look, if the Tigers are going to say, we'll give you Scooble, but we need 3 or 4 top prospects, including River Ryan, I definitely think the Dodgers would be in on that. So I don't think they're calling him up to showcase him necessarily, but that's just kind of naturally part of it, I guess.
Is there one prospect? Let's just say Scooble, because he's potentially the best pitcher available. Is there one prospect that's kind of a deal breaker for you, or do you think that the Dodgers should basically be open to the right combination of anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with the combination, like you said. Like I think Josue DePaula is kind of the young guy in the farm system that you really don't want to trade right now. But if they said, for talking about Scooble here, like if the Tigers said, give us Josue DePaula instead of 2 of your other top prospects, and you're kind of saving there, then I would definitely be interested, especially when you're talking about a guy like Tarik Skubal, who's like one of the 3 best pitchers in baseball right now, and he's young in the prime of his career. Like, I don't think the Dodgers have any untouchables right now when you're talking about a guy like that.
Yeah. All right. We'll enter a few more. We're getting close to the 7:10 start time. Just a reminder, if you could start it with the word question in all caps, that helps us. Noisy Ninja says, in the next 10 years with Shohei, how long do you think it'll take him to hit one out at Dodger Stadium? I mean, if it happens tonight, if it happens tomorrow, like, I would not be shocked. The one he hit yesterday, like at first glance, I thought, oh man, like he got that out of the stadium. I guess I joked with Blake that he's the first player to ever hit one through Dodger Stadium because of the way it like carried and then technically rolled out. Me personally, I wouldn't be, if he pulls that ball yesterday a little bit more, then it's clearing with ease.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like someone in like right center field in the pavilion, like in the beer line or something, and like all of a sudden a ball just like comes rushing by them. That must have been wild. But yeah, I mean, Shohei will hit it out at some point. He's gotten close a couple times, and this is year 1 we're talking about. So I think, like you said, he's got to pull it more. Like when he's going to almost straightaway center field or right center field, like it's hard to hit it out there. But if he pulls one like over the bullpen or something, like I could definitely see that going out.
Robert Williams says, Pax got the DFA. All the Dodgers did was stash him for a week. They need the roster spot. If a team wants him, they will pull him back. If no team wants him, Dodgers can send him to the minors, yes or no. That's not the way this process works. He's been designated for assignment, so now he's going through waivers. On the off chance that Paxton were to clear, then the Dodgers could ask him if he would want to go to accept a minor league option. But because he has enough major league service time, he could reject it. My guess is he would reject it and just say, I want to become a free agent. But the reality is my guess is he's going to get claimed on waivers, and then the Dodgers will then work out a trade with the team at that point. Let's see, a couple more. Our referee, he's giving us great show, guys. We thank you for being in here. We're almost up to 3,000 people today, so this is a great crowd right before the game is about to start.
We might have to do more pregame shows. It seems like the people are speaking to us.
I know. I did see a question earlier asking about a postgame show tonight. I don't think we'll do one. We should be back tomorrow night, though, doing a postgame show. I believe it'll be me and Anthony. I will say, if River Ryan throws a complete game tonight or a no-hitter, then I promise you we will do a live postgame show tonight. But short of something like that, I think this will end up being it. Of course, if there's some big trade or a big rumor that comes out, we can definitely see about hopping on, even if it's just for a little bit. Here, we're getting asked, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce your name, so I apologize. They're wondering if we're familiar with Daiso, the Japanese discount store. Apparently, Google search went big, and now Daiso might be doing a Shohei Ohtani bobblehead. So they do have a sponsorship at Dodger Stadium hanging under the pavilion roof, and that's where Ohtani's ball went. And so obviously with all the replays, it would make sense that they got exposure. I'm not familiar with the store. I know the Dodgers have a sponsorship agreement with them, but other than that, I don't know a whole lot. Humanity, we did do some trade rumor talk about 15, 20 minutes ago. So once we hop off of here, just rewind. You'll be able to find it there. We'll also be turning this into a podcast like we always do, so you could listen to it there. But basically, I mean, not a whole lot of movement since Scott and Blake discussed things last night. Dodgers are looking for starting pitching, maybe Skubal, maybe Crochet, maybe a bigger trade with the White Sox that could involve Luis Robert as well, or Kopech. Yeah, but that's kind of where that stands. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry you missed the discussion earlier. I think this might be it, Daniel, unless you happen to see one that I might have missed. No.
I think that covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll end it here. That way it gives everybody almost 10 minutes to maybe grab something to drink, grab some food, and get ready for tonight's game. Like we said, River Ryan is making his MLB debut tonight. We appreciate all you guys who joined us. That's Daniel. I'm Matthew. We will see you, barring anything crazy tonight, we'll see you tomorrow night for a live post-game show. This one we did a little bit different. We appreciate everybody who hopped on. We'll see you tomorrow for a post-game show.